Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of Leadership Podcast with me, Stephen Akintayo. And today I have a fantastic friend in the building. We've known each other for over a decade. And honestly, I humorously call him the co-founder of our organization because we've been there, done that. And I think there are few people who have been as vulnerable too, like I have been with Eizu. And I want to at least today thank him for not taking it for granted. Okay? Eizu Uwaoma.
How you doing?
How you doing?
It's funny how someone can be this close to you and still a star in your eyes. That's how it feels, you know? There's just one see finish factor, but you're still a star. And just off before we got in here, I was saying that if I was to make money from every time someone says, "Can you introduce Dr. Stephen?" I would have blown. So good to always be here.
Thank you. So where do we start from? I see, you know, I had Toperisha yesterday, and I was telling myself, well, yeah, son of a rich man. I said, no, he's middle class. You know, the other person I see in that light is you, right? You grew up in Ikoyi, even though, funny enough, one would have thought you'd be living in Ikoyi today, but you're not the Ikoyi guy.
Yeah.
But you grew up in Ikoyi, you grew up with all these children of very wealthy, affluent guys. So technically, you had that mentality, that mindset. What was it like growing up with that level of wealth?
Interesting. It's important to also do a self-disclosure that there are different people who grew up in Ikoyi. Growing up in Ikoyi as a tenant from growing up in Ikoyi as a landlord. So that's a fundamental.
So
like it's important.
They were middle class.
But Ikoyi in 30 years ago was really a GRA. So it was a lot of government residential. So if your parents had a good job, they probably be able to live in Ikoyi because maybe the company they work for had their buildings, their residences there. So that's something people have to really understand, that there's an old Ikoyi and a new Ikoyi, right? You know, so money, the old money, new money. So yes, a lot of middle class kids grew up around Ikoyi. But yes, funny enough, what it does for you, it gives you a sense of, gives you a very good mindset of what abundance is. See, a lot of people don't succeed because they have a scarcity mentality. So you never even knew what scarcity is because everything looked abundant. So it's easy to get things. So I can walk into any room and not feel faced by anything because, I mean, I grew up with kids who would be doing lesson and then they would come in with convoys. So I'm not going to be faced by someone, a Yahoo boy driving a Hilux with a convoy. So basically, I think that's fundamentally what it does. It also shows you ownership because you start to understand how one of the things I've learned from just hanging around a certain type of people over the years is two things. How everything is passive. Nobody really owns anything. In one generation, I've seen people whose parents used to be very wealthy, right? All of a sudden become like average. I've also seen people who in this one life, I've seen people whose parents used to be drivers, right? To rich people. Who the kids of those rich people are working for the kids of those drivers. So it shows you how life is in one generation, I think, can switch. I'd give you a very practical example. It's not that deep. There's a particular person in this country who was my childhood friend, whose dad at some point had two staff that we saw, right? One was Felicia Lakija, the other one was Tony Nimelu, one guy.
Wow.
But those two people I mentioned now, I probably would be richer.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So it just shows you how life is transitional. Like I still see that with my kids now, and I'm taking them for a walk. And maybe I see maybe an aboki who's selling with his kids, and I want to explain to them that in one generation you can actually, you don't have to do anything wrong to work for those kids. You don't have to. So we're not saying you're going to be irresponsible but life is transitional. 20 years ago, people like Dangote would have looked at people like MK Abiola as mentors. 20 years after, the kids of MK Abiola would not be looking at them. So life is very transitional. It's quite an interesting perspective and disposition to have. I think that's really one of the most powerful things.
But how did you not feel intimidated? Because your father wasn't rich. You just happened to live around that place. So how come you didn't feel intimidated by those kids?
I would give that credit to my parents.
Okay.
So I've heard this over and over again, but more importantly, I've lived it. It's not what you live with your kids that matters. It's what you live in your kids. So I don't know how my dad gave us that impression that we were not average. Right? I mean, we had the best clothes like everyone will. Of course, as I grew older, I started to realize that there was a lot of sacrifice to us. I mean, it was years ago, I was just thinking about it, that it was years ago I just realized that the day I graduated from school, from university, was the day my dad resigned. So thinking about it now,
was the last child?
Yes, last child. So thinking about it just hit me that this guy literally held on just to give us the best life. And I'm so glad he's 84 now. I'm so glad that we can say thank you while he's still alive. I'm like, okay, so he held the light on. So I think that's where it came from. Because that feeling of being less starts from home, when your parents start to give you the impression that don't you know things are hard? Oh, that don't you know? I never got that. I didn't even know we were average. I didn't know. It was now looking back, I'm like, oh, that's true. This guy used to come to lesson with this, and we sometimes used to walk to lesson, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's cool. So I think, and then value systems have changed over the years, right? Now maybe parents would tell their kids, don't play with it.
Exactly.
Let me tell you how important this is. Think of anybody that grew up in the 80s, 90s. They all watch the same things. Right now, kids now don't even watch the same things. Right?
True.
I don't even understand. Like, we all have the same childhood. We all watch things like Moonlight, we all watch Okonkwo or Things Fall Apart. So everything was baseline. Everybody can say, look, watch Secret of the Sand, or those kind of things, and things have changed now. So there are two sets of people now. There wasn't anything like that. So I think that's where that fundamentally came from.
But will you say, because by the way, guys, let me share this story. I'm not a night person. The only time ever in Lagos I left my house 11 p.m. was this man. And I had to do it because it was his birthday.
Why you the cast me?
He always complain that even when I do party, I do afternoon party that ends 8 p.m. It's like, is that 9 p.m. we should even start the party? But my point is, yes, you party and you still are the outdoor guy. But you never got into addiction. Because I still see a lot of the guys you grew up with, a lot of them are struggling to keep their nose clean. Really, really, they can't put it all together. Many of them now look up to you. Will you say it was because your parents were not as rich as they were? Because you still went to all those parties with them, but you just didn't get, deep. You were deep enough, but reasonably deep.
So this is very weird coming from, because you know me very well. I think about this too. And the only logical explanation I can see is mom's prayers. You see, I still can remember times where we're out on Friday nights. Mom was out too on night vigil.
Wow.
Right. So I've come to think about it. I'm like, are you sure that these things we see in movies where your parents, before you're born, dedicate you to a deity, doesn't happen in a positive way, where your parents have dedicated you to God and say, look, no matter how much this boy rigmaroles, right? He must come back to, because there's no other logical explanation to it. But in the end, there was still also a good part. Okay, so once again, if you grew up on the island in the 80s, 90s, you're probably going to be very extroverted. And I'll tell you why. We had BMX bicycles, we had roller skates, we had skateboards. One of the things I used to just say is that if you grew up say in Corivia, then there was no Lekki, funny enough.
Banana Island, all these axes.
Banana Island was where I learned to drive. And you know why I learned how to drive in Banana Island? Because every single part of Banana Island was sand, fuel, and road. There was no single car. There was no single house. So it was a very large expanse of land where people just go to learn to drive. So, I mean, this is Banana Island and Lekki Phase 1, where came a bit later. Matter of fact, what you call today Onyuru, we used to call it Sandfield.
Wow.
It was Sandfield because it was like what Eco Atlantic was 10 years ago. It was just sand filling. It's like what the coastal road would look like.
Exactly.
Right? So I always laugh when I tell people that, what you call these big buildings. It was where we used to play football because it was all white sand. But extrovertedness was a thing that I'm grateful for because a lot of the interactions then were outside. We're outsiders.
Yes.
So if you grow up in Ikoyi, you must know either how to ride a bicycle, ride roller skates or skateboard, or learn how to swim. And if you think of those three things, they are extroverted. You're not going to swim in your parlor. You're not going to ride roller skates in your parlor. You're not going to ride bicycle. So we learned how to connect and talk to people. I still talk to my colleagues about this, and I'm like, oh, how do you guys talk, boy, girl? How do you guys talk? I have Gen Zs in my office, and they're like, 2021. Like, how do you talk to girls these days? Like, I'm talking to guys like, I said, you're probably DMing somebody. So you haven't developed the guts to walk up to, like, we grew up crossing the road to say hi to someone you don't know from anywhere. So we learned rejection firsthand. If she didn't feel you in that term, then you get the feedback immediately. Right? So I think extrovertedness is something, if any parents listening now, you've got to give your kids the gift of extrovertedness. Let them stay out. All that whole, everybody has a tab in their house and everybody sits in their house. You don't know your next door neighbor. You are killing their social skill.
Yes.
Right. So I think that's something that happened. Right.
But how come you never went down with that?
So I already explained that. I think there's no other explanation that there was probably a spiritual. It's the backing spiritually that you had. Yes. I would strongly believe.
You believe.
Yes, and then of course your dad would do what he needs to do to say, look, remember whose son you are. And core values and ideologies still today. There's still things we say that we don't do in our family. We say, no, we don't do it in our family.
Wow.
Right. So I can't think of a lot of my uncles or aunties I don't know any uncle auntie who smokes. So I there's a particular friend I have now who's battling with certain things. But I was talking to my wife recently, and I'm like, oh, just thinking about it. I remember when I used to go to guy's house as in primary school. I remember his mom and dad having commissioned over whiskey and smoke. Like they're smoking cigarettes. So it's harder for you to not go off that tangent. Right. So I think fundamentally it's still ideologies. People have to know who they are. And I'd give a good example, and I don't want to mention names. There used to be a famous person who used to own a famous nightclub.
Okay.
Right. On Aolo Road. Solid lady, right? Dated someone who was really high up there, and dated for years. They were like the poster boys. They would be like our own Will and Jada, right? Or Jay-Z and Beyonce in that level. They're really high. I mean, there was a particular popular song that you mentioned, lady's name, and it didn't work out. Years of dating. So years after, I'm in the boardroom, I meet the guy. And so we're talking, he's married, everybody's like 20 years, but he's old. And I'm like, oh, so why didn't you marry that lady then? You know what he said? And I laughed. I said, look, man, should I be honest with you? I would never love anyone like I loved her. So I'm like, so why didn't you end up marrying her? I said, look, in our family, there are things we don't do.
Wow.
So that thing called there are things we don't do. Of course, I got to find out that he was one of the blue bloods, northern blue bloods, where in their family, they don't drink.
Wow.
Right? So because they don't drink, and then they found out that the girl runs a nightclub and, of course, drinks and sells drinks. So everybody has got to have ideology. This is why Jewish people are very successful. Right? Jewish people have what they can do and what they can't
philosophies,
do. Yes.
Family values.
Yes, absolutely.
Everybody just know this is who we are. We just don't pass this.
Absolutely. So family values the power of grace, which is inspired by deep prayers and deep, utterances made on your behalf, right? I think every parent has a fundamental responsibility to cover their kids on a spiritual level, right? I think that's really important. And then to keep reminding the kids of their central ideologies of life. The same thing that happens in boardroom. Core values, we just put them on our walls. But if everybody understands that these are the core ideology of our business, I mean, look at global brands. Look at like the iPhone. iPhone has a fundamental ideology. Look, whatever we're going to produce as Apple, right? Whether it's the Macintosh, whether it's the iWatch, whether it's the iPod, whether it's the iPad, whether it's the iPhone, fundamentally, they all have to be simple. So there's a reason why it's called A for Apple, literally Apple. So simplicity is a core value. So the same way companies have core values, I feel like families have got to have core ideologies. So I think it's the ideology that kept us right our head above water. I think it's the prayers. Then I also think that is the ability for you to be confident enough, and that confidence, for me, in my own opinion, would have come from competitive advantage. So at a very young age, right, but also sense of humility, I would assume I've taken IQ tests over and over again, so I do know right? When you have self-discovery at a very high age, you have identity.
Yeah.
So I've always known, like, look, I don't need to prove, because don't forget, as teenagers, a lot of people tried a lot of these vices because of peer pressure, for lack of identity.
Yeah.
So I, for example, if I was going to, at 16, 17, going to talk to someone, right? So let me say boy, girl.
Yeah.
I'm not pressed for that peer pressure of, oh, I have to be someone else.
Yes,
But that someone else is, like, I mean, I've been in rooms where they're passing whatever they're passing. I know I don't, I'm fine. Right? They're not going to take me out of that room because you need me in that room, whether it's for intellect or for whatever it is. So I think competition advantage is a thing. Competition advantage is the thing you're good at to make up for the things you're not good at. So I'll give a good example. I have this, at this point, I'll probably just mention names, right? I have these two very childhood friends, very interesting. One of them is Tricky Edozie. His name is Lynx, right? He had a rap name called Lynx. He used to be probably the first African or first Nigerian to be signed as a Pepsi ambassador, right? Really up there. His dad used to be a former deputy governor and then MD of Afribank back then. So you can see the profile, right? And then I have another very good friend. We had a rap group where I used to rap then. Back then, memories, nostalgia.
Rap group.
Right. And I never forget this conversation, like how we would walk into, that was called Galleria, like Rapper Silverbed is now. Galleria. Yeah, walking just young kids as teenagers, and how you just used to crack a joke and say, like, man, these are guys who were like blokes in more ways than one. And then with a surname to back that up.
Yeah.
And I always used to tell myself, just mentally, if I walk into a room with these four guys and we were to be teenagers that we are to talk to this one girl, I don't stand a chance, because these are like, matter of fact, the other guy is half caste, so Ramsey Noah looking type vibe, you know. But one of the things I learned pretty well and pretty early was you've got to, at any room you get in, ask yourself, what is my compensation advantage? So I don't have a competitive advantage, but I have a compensation advantage. Competition advantage is something I'm good at to make up for what I'm not good at. So if I'm not as good looking as my friends, right?
If I'm not probably from a rich home.
Yes, if I
better be intellectually sound.
Yes, it could be a lot of other things. So I think that's what everybody has got to find. And it happens everywhere. David and Goliath too. Goliath is big, he's strong, he's powerful, he's a veteran fighter. David is not. But David compensates for something else. He knew he was a chosen one. So that confidence is why he picked up a stone, right? And picked up and said, look, let's go for it. He also has history behind him. So because I know in our family, we know they carry last. Like it's that confidence that Nigerians have when they go abroad, right? When Nigerians are Nigerians, that's the thing, we survive, right? So just having a lot of those things. So competition advantage is what everybody has got to have. Like, look, the blind man can't see, but he's developed a competitive advantage to hear better than the average person. That's why a blind man can cross a road. If you close your eyes, you can't cross that road. So he's built, and so the universe gives us that naturally, but if it doesn't, you've got to find it by yourself.
So I remember all your checklist before you got married. I got married before you. And, she must speak multiple languages. She must be mentally cerebral. She must be. You had all these lists. You're married a couple of years now. You have 2 kids. Do you think those things were overrated?
Of course, we are different things at different phases of our lives, right? I like to look at life as morning, afternoon, night. First 30 to 60, 60 to 90. 3 phases of your life. First 30 is called morning, 30 to 60 is called afternoon, and 60 to 90 is called night. Your different things at those different phases of your life. So I think of some of the things I hold or I held dear in my 20s. I don't hold them dear anymore. Right? I mean, right now, I'll do anything to leave work on time, just take my kids to the park. 20 years ago, I'm even saying, man, maybe I can just marry and drop the family in the UK and live my life now. Now, so you see how people change, right? So yes, my view before, when I was in my early 20s, of what a wife material would be was not the view when I got married. And I realized that it's okay to say, look, things change. Right. Of course, on a lighter note, except that, of course, my wife speaks multiple languages. Right. But for me, let me give a good example.
She was your spec. Let's not even, you went for that checklist. But my point is, now that you got the checklist, don't you think he was just just unnecessarily overrated because it wasn't really what was keeping the marriage.
No. The one matter of fact, I'll be honest with you. What I think is most important thing in this boy-girl thing is not even feelings, in my own opinion. Right? It's never feelings, right? It's never emotions. I mean, emotion is such sort of hormones, right? So it's chemical reaction,
exactly.
right? So, but I like to state something. In my 20s, I was very high energy. You know that. You will still crack. I'm your business consultant, remember, right? And every time you'd say, "Oh, there's a pre-marriage, there's a pre-marriage Eizu and a post-marriage Eizu."
Yes.
So, like what people say that there's a pre-K Kanye West and there's a post-K Kanye West, you know? Right? But here's the thing. One of the things that changed is how I think the person you wake up to every day or wake up with every day, right, doesn't have to be as high energy as you, because that's too much energy in one room, right? So I'd give a very good example of this. My first early 20s, I dated there was a lady who was a pilot. Right. I mean, at 22, she was flying. She'd flown helicopters. She'd flown
That's Eizu's kind of girl.
737, 747.
That's
you know,
Eizu's
and I look back, I'm like, if I had ended up with this particular person, I probably would not be as happy as I am, because sometimes that whole energy around the world actually drains you. You just want to come back home to peace.
Yeah.
Someone like this, I mean, I don't want to do DYDX in the boardroom and come back home to meet DYDX.
Yeah.
Right. So I think balance, as you grow older, peace of mind becomes more important to you than anything else. Right. And I'm glad I have that peace, and it's an amazing place to be in. But you could compromise that peace with the highest energy you want. The thing that's...
I married the same. My wife is, I'm your senior when it comes to marriage. I'm your married consultant. Mentor. But I used to really... At the back of my mind, just say, Eizu doesn't understand how this thing works. When you used to tell me all those, she must speak multiple languages. I'm like, guy, in this married thing, you even want your opposite. And I'm happy that you got it.
Yes.
And I think maybe God also helped you, because you wouldn't have on your own just, gone that route.
5 years ago, how we used to argue about spirituality and how I was almost a agnostic, right?
Yes,
sort of, right? Almost like a free thinking person.
I think you're still in a way a bit.
But I've come to see
the role of being spiritual.
Yes. So certain words have become powerful to me. You see things like mercy, things like grace. I've come to see that you can do all the right things and end up in the wrong place when you don't have that grace. I think one of the dumbest thoughts anybody can have is to think that everything you see in life is a bunch of coincidences happening at the same time. There is premeditation, there is plan, there is someone who intentionally created it. And once you know that, right, purpose becomes easy, because if I'm stuck with trying to figure out how to do something, let me say a gadget, the best reset to know how to do that thing is to go back to the person that created that thing, right? I think that that's a fundamental thing that changed also, like my view on understanding that it's not just him that run it, right? There's a deeper, and I wish a lot more people, because it's a trap that most intellectual people get into, where they are so intellectual that they think that that's all you need. Then I've now seen people who are so intelligent to succeed.
I like that.
They are too intelligent.
I like that. I look at, your career. You've been a business, management consultant for years now. And let me start with motivational speaker versus consultant. What's the difference? And, we always say, my argument is both are needed. At the phase of your life, you need motivation. But if everything just stays at motivation, it doesn't make sense, right? So the higher level seems to also be consulting, but you could be very motivating. So why consulting, and what's the difference?
Okay, so I'll use an illustration of the difference. To go to a new city, there are 3 travel stakeholders you need to know.
Okay.
You need to know a travel agent. You need to know you need to have a travel agent. You need to have a tour guide, right? Let me even just use the 2, travel agent and tour guide, right? Now the travel agent is like the motivator.
Yeah.
Right? Travel agent would advise you. Your travel agent most times are not gone to the city.
Yeah.
You see those guys in the embassy, working in the embassy. Some of them have not gone to the countries
That's true. I like that.
Right? The travel agent can advise you how to get the visa.
Yes.
Right? And even tell you what hotel to stay in. But they've never gone there. That's a motivational speaker right there. And that's not to say, that's not discount that role. Because without the travel agent, you will never have gotten there. The tour guide works with you. Right? Matter of fact, that tour guide has been there several times. Right? So when you go to, say, Kenya, you go to safari, the tour guide has been there over. He can tell you when not to touch the lion, right? So I think that's the difference. Like, you're right, both of them are needed. And I don't know why of recent there's a new wave movement of people criticizing pastors, criticizing motivational speakers, and the context of that criticism is that what have they done apart from speaking? And my joke is, and my response to that is, we all need a coach. So a motivator is sort of like a coach. The player versus the coach. The player needs the coach. The coach might not have gotten the result as the player. Right?
Yes.
I mean,
most coaches are never well for a successful player.
I mean, Quincy Jones was literally like a mentor / producer to Michael Jackson. Quincy Jones couldn't dance, couldn't really sing. But without Quincy Jones, you never would have had a Michael Jackson, right? Phil, what's his name now? I'm trying to find the name. Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson is one of the greatest coaches of Chicago Bulls. He actually discovered and developed Michael Jordan.
Wow.
Right? But never had a good career in basketball as a player. So there's nothing wrong with someone coaching you, right? Even if he hasn't gotten that result. Everybody has a special gift. Some people are supposed to climb the ladder. Some people are supposed to help you hold the ladder so you can climb. If their life ambition or their gift is to hold the ladder, climb, and stop asking if the person holding the ladder can climb the ladder, right? That's division of labor. They are dreamers, they are thinkers, and they are doers. Not everybody's supposed to do.
I love this one.
Not everybody's supposed to do.
Dreamers, thinkers, and doers.
Right. So if you find a thinker, and that's how I like to think of we consultants. Of recent, I started to invest. I've started to own other businesses that I'm not deeply involved with. I mean, I have a retail brand, my wife, that is doing literally 9 outlets in less than 2 years. We've built businesses, invested money in places, but my first love is still consulting, which is Xavier and the whole management consulting thing. Now, because of the sheer amount of people I've seen run businesses, succeeded, failed, right? That counts for being the tour guide. So I hope I've put context in the difference. Both of them are yin yang. You need the both of them.
You need both.
You need the dreamer, you need the thinker, you need the doer. Right. And I hope that helps.
That's a fantastic way of putting it. Of all the businesses you've consulted for, I mean, which one is the most successful, number one, and then which one is the most intriguing, like most exhausting?
Okay, because of our work as consultants, sometimes we sign NDAs and all that. But I'll look at popular brands. We've done work for maybe over 200 brands. I mean, from the Rough and Tumbles to the Sensors, to the GTEX, to the iFitness, to New Age, to them. The most intriguing or the most successful, they're not the same thing, right? The most successful brands, people don't know them because they're not retail, right? If I tell you my top 5 clients, people probably don't know them. But if I give you like the back end and say, look, for example, if I tell you that, you know what, like 70% of the palm oils, I'm just saying, 70% of the palm oil in everybody's house. And I say, we're behind getting it to your house. You don't know. You just use palm oil, right? You know, right? You know, this kind of businesses. So there's a lot of this kind of B2B, B2Gs, right? But when it comes to retail, I think one of the most interesting and exciting brands that I've worked with, maybe because of the story behind them, right, and the journey, I would put Rough and Tumble as one of them, for the fact that it shows you that you don't have to, that there are neglected markets that people don't pay attention to, right? I mean,
by the way, I would love to host her on this podcast.
We can make that happen, Auntie. I call her Auntie Nike, right? So here's the funny thing, we can make that happen. I like iFitness. Not even for what iFitness is becoming. iFitness, the gym, the retail gym.
Yes.
Not for what it is, but for what it's becoming.
Okay.
Right. The whole idea that, and I had lunch with him too, Felicia, I had lunch with him 2 weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago. The whole idea that I can live in a place, work in another place, and I don't have to miss my schedule in where I work because I need to go to the gym where I live. You know, which one membership at iFitness, if you live in Magodo and you work in Lekki Phase 1, you don't have to go to any gym you find. And if you know what those guys are building in the next 10 years, they're probably going to have in every major city. And I find that very disruptive. And I like the fact that the community, any business that builds community with with the business is powerful, right? So while you look at iFitness as a gym, you also forget that it's a community. People have become the best friends. You know, now you have things like my gym buddy, my gym bestie, gym party. People are getting married. People had mental health issues before they walked into the gym. They walk out with higher dopamine and they're like, it does more things than one. So you think of gym as just fitness, but just look at gym as a community. People have their people. It's a happy place for a lot of people. So I find it very interesting. But because I'm also behind the scene to know what the blueprint's looking like, I know it's super exciting. It's super exciting because I mean, it's the future, right? It's wellness. This country gets poorer. People move from curative health to preventive health. Now we're going to HMOs. We're going to HMOs to say, look, sign this guy up with your gym because if people go to the gym more, you save money with HMOs on healthcare, right? You know, you work out a lot more. During COVID, I saw the fights. I remember being on the phone with Felicia and saying, Felicia, look, if logistics guys are allowed to run when everybody's on lockdown, gyms should be allowed to run. And I made a case, and that case made sense. I remember like all through all the Third Mainland Bridge and all of that, Bagada, Oshodi Expressway, were football posts. People played football, like doing, because the road was free. And I was saying, this is it. Like, and I made a case. I said, look, two people that you have to allow run if you must fight COVID, because we didn't have a cure for COVID. It was two things. One thing we knew that worked with COVID is that if your immune system was stronger, you would get COVID, but you will survive COVID. If you had underlying health issues, you weren't going to probably survive COVID. Look at people that died across that COVID infection lines. There were people who had underlying, maybe hypertension, diabetes. So we're saying if the immune system are strong, then the two people government has got to allow to be on the street. The guys that help you work out, and then those malams that sell fruits.
Because those fruits will also have a preventive.
So I like this. I like businesses that are disruptive. I like businesses that create new markets that didn't exist, right? So I can't think of, a lot of people will not know any known gym before iFitness came. So if it was a new market, right, there are brands I've not worked with, I like to work with. Like, I'd want to sit down, I'll give a good example. I like to sit down with very weird conversation, and I've never been on what God cannot do does not exist. But I'd like to work with Jerry Eze, and I'll tell you why. I like the fact that he created new markets. I like the fact that he created a new market.
Did he create a new market?
I think him and Nathaniel Bassi.
Prayer has always been an old market.
Prayer using technology wasn't something people were big at. The highest we had before those came was Pastor Chris saying, hold your TV, right? But that was one too many.
He disrupted
him and Nathaniel
Bassi.
Him and Nathaniel Bassi created a totally new market. A lot of people you find on Hallelujah Challenge and on what's the prayer called? What
NSPPD?
No, NSPPD. I think is that Harvesters?
No, that's Jerry.
Is that Jerry? Okay, Jerry. What's Harvesters? Harvesters. It has another one. Harvesters has its own version too. Balaji. But okay, if you say that's the name, right? But I like to do the hashtag God cannot do the next.
Yes.
Right. When you look at the people who post those things on their WhatsApp status, they're not
the church people.
They're not the usual church people. So he created an absolutely new market and also made a market obsolete. So I like businesses that also kill businesses.
Which market did he make obsolete?
Night vigil. A lot of videos. Have you noticed? How many people do you know on Friday, last Friday of the month, they're trying to go somewhere else? Yeah. So I'm not going to say he killed, because that he wouldn't want to be seen as that. But the truth about it is, any business that creates a new market and kills an old market, like how, I mean, let's look at it logically. Netflix killed DVDs, right? I killed Blockbuster and all those things, right? If care is not taking, Netflix is also eating into the cinema market, right?
Absolutely.
So I think
and you're
that's
right,
good.
because even for me, those I love working with, whether investment coaching, for themselves or for their ministry, are pastors. I mean, maybe partly because I used to pastor. I use that word. We quote because
I never heard from a pastor before, except
that's why I retired myself, right? And that's why I say in quote, because as if they withdraw my ordination, but I retired myself and focused more on business at some point. But partly also because I realized that these people have a strong hold on people. And I think that if many of them step up and start having a bit more of investment mindset, business mindset, the people will change. Not even just for their ministry, is that the way the members begin to see things begin to change, right? Because I don't think that there is no place for religion or faith. I won't say that. I'm still a strong spiritual person. But there has to be a balance. They both, and the person for me that has done this so well is Pastor Boju. Right?
Is there an investment arm to his business?
No. Yeah. To create a mentality of there's a need for professionals. There's a need for enterprise. Yes. Right? And faith can also be moved together. Yeah. Right? He
has a young professional network now.
Very huge. He's in Covenant Christian Center. You see people say, I wanted to become a C-suite, right? And I went for
young professionals, a boot camp, something. Or I want to be a government official. So
and I started making confession
platforms
about becoming a C-suite. You see how you married both. You went for training on how to be a C-suite. So it's not as if you leave the training part and then all you are doing is confession. God, make me a C-suite. You blend both, and I think if a lot of religious people begin to balance that. The lives will change.
But there's also another thing, and I'll be very direct. I'd like to say, if you're a writer, you write the kind of books you love to read. If you're a singer, you sing the kind of song you love to listen to. I'm very direct. I'm straight up. I also think that you can't pour from an empty cup. A lot of the pastors can't do better because they don't know better, right? So it's hard for a pastor to show you the power of work. Right, because he's never really worked. Don't forget, a lot of these pastors started off from campus and then grew, so don't understand the work process, right? I think one of the biggest problem Nigeria is having is not religion, it's the fact that religion promotes people to transfer their responsibility to God, right? One of the worst people I've seen in the struggle ladder of life, Africa doesn't contribute more than 3% of the world's productivity, sadly. Nigeria doesn't have more than 1.5% that has 500K in their account. That means 98% of Nigerians don't have 500K account. That's how everybody's struggling. 90% of Nigerians are struggling, right? And one of the things, when you engage with struggling people, no matter the city, you find they all have something common. So one, they don't take responsibility. And I think that to a large extent, there's a particular form of religion, and let me say Christianity, that doesn't promote people taking responsibility. They say, keep your problems, put the problems on the altar of God. It requires no aid, right? It requires none of your own effort, and we get that grace conversation. But what it does, it also creates some level of I can't come and kill myself. God will do everything. Complacency. Yes. I think that's the first problem.
Irresponsible faith.
Yes. Where a lot of people just say, look, and then they open up the stage, right? The altar for testimonies that should never have been testimonies. Somebody coming to tell you that he passed an exam and he didn't read, or he got a job, he got a job he didn't apply for. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Right? Do you get me? So those are and what you don't realize is that the problem with a lot of us is that we haven't learned to take ownership ownership and responsibility. And then now you have a new wave preaching, telling you that, your responsibility, give it to
just
God.
Transfer it to God. God will just do everything
God will do it for you. So there is no sense. Another one, sense of urgency, right? People, God's time is the best, right? Whatever would be. You see,
and do you notice? So I don't know how I should ask this question yet. Do you notice that it's people who are really, really at the top that champion some of those conversations? Like oftentimes you see a pastor who is now extremely successful come out and start shouting grace. It's all grace. I didn't know. And it's a very successful entrepreneur. Just say, it's a bit of luck. When he was starting, was that what he was saying? He was busy making the calls. He was busy having sleepless nights. He was busy. There's a way, and I think it's a human issue. As you start getting successful, because it look a bit easier because you're enjoying exponential growth because a lot of what the foundation you've laid and leveraging on OPM, OPT, all of these things just makes, unconsciously begin to push more, which is good because you're trying to say, I didn't do this all by myself. People helped me. God helped me. And you just want to transfer that response. But unconsciously, what you are doing to the younger ones who've not done any effort, do is to just say, they too should just be saying, well, God will do it. God, I can just fold my hands and God will do it.
I think there are two sides to the story. My own opinion, this is my opinion. First of all, if the people at the top intentionally try to sell religion is for their own protection.
No, not even religion. It's just like, my argument is just like, how do I put it now?
I was going to get there. Okay, so why I was having that is sometimes when Northern Nigeria is good with this, where they use...
Let me give a practical example of what I'm trying to say. You say a very successful guy say, money is not everything. Oh, you now already have the money. And it's just like you now having that conversation, say, I can't do anything to rush back to my family. Right?
I can't say that rush back to my family,
Yes. Years ago, I would be busy grinding, right? But it's that you've hit a level of success, right? That now the priority for you is the family, right? But when you say that unconsciously, you're telling somebody who is just at the lowest level that, look, don't prioritize money, just prioritize. And then he still needs to grind to even now get to where you are, where you can now have enough to take care of family and even now prioritize family. I hope that makes sense. So you see a lot of rich people now say, money is not everything. Yeah, but you're rich now.
Okay, so let me defend them. It's because you can also be different things at different stages of your life, right? That's what I assume. But there's some set of very wealthy people who use grace to envelope their story for the lack of morality of how they got there. So people forget that, right? So you see somebody who used to be a fashion designer, right? And all of a sudden, from fashion design, there is a whole missing story, and the next thing is probably like on the richest people, and you can't tell those missing stories because that missing story is not black and white. It's see, what a lot of things we call favor in Nigeria is corruption, right? So maybe you didn't merit it, you just did something and you didn't go through a proper bid process, and you got maybe an oil well. So it's hard to tell that story end to end, or maybe you are the MD of a bank that takes over another big bank that you should naturally not have taken over because somebody's trying to get at somebody, and so you can't tell the story the way it is, and so the easy way to do that is just grace, to bring in grace and God. So I feel like that's what's happening, and I think that the young people, every time you do that, it's unfair to the young people that look up to you because you deprive them of the step, the standard operating procedure to get there.
Exactly.
Right, because like anybody can fall off a ladder by accident. Nobody climbs a ladder by accident. If you're going to get to the top of the ladder and remove the ladder that got you there, and people say, can I come up there with you? And you keep saying grace, but the ladder has been taken down. That's really what's happening with a lot of these people. So I think that's really and I think young people need to get to that point where you tell me the steps. And this is why you don't have a lot of successful people tell their stories, right? I mean, you can still pick up how John D. Rockefeller of ExxonMobil and Chevron made it big, right? You can still look at how Henry Ford made it big, how Vanderbilt made it big, how
JP Morgan,
modern day time like the Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezos. But if you look at the Nigerian stories, always somewhat crooked, right? My uncle gave me money and then we went blank for a while and then you came back later.
Boom.
As you know, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Like, there's too many steps that were missing. So why don't you tell us at a point where maybe you were bringing in things you shouldn't bring into Nigeria? You know those kind of things. But you know the funny thing about this conversation is fundamentally a lot of things has to change for the sake of the next generation, right? Because if you don't teach people the power of steps and process, if you eliminate that process and you replace that thing called process with luck, right? Even what you call luck is a set of cumulative advantages over time. And you don't tell us what those cumulative advantages are. It's hard. If you tell me, I became successful, I met this guy who's my mentor, right? So first thing first, I learned that I need to meet somebody who my mentor. You go one step, I say, that's my mentor. When I met him, I served him for 4 years. I know that there's service. So I can start to look at the key things and so I say, okay, if I meet this guy, I'm not going to ask him for money. I'm going to ask him, can I serve you? You give me step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, because you owe. Well, it's not our right, but there's an obligation.
You owe people, the next generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
How you made it. Will you say that the religious fathers, whether imams or pastors, have failed? One of the persons that I was supposed to host as a guest on this podcast today, quite very famous and quite famous for going viral with a lot of, sweet talks on what people need to do to be better, but I mean, it's twice now that I just noticed he doesn't keep to his words. I called him, we're supposed to meet. He said, I'll get back to you. And he's quick with how, and then Zoom. Then we met again. It was the first time. I said, but you said we're going to meet. So now again, he was supposed to come for this. Now, meanwhile, you will see so many content of the person where he just challenging, keep to time. If you don't, and then put all the rhymes and back end, not living to expectation. Now, a lot of young Nigerians have that mentality that their spiritual leaders have failed. Because sometimes I argue that why put the responsibility of government, on pastors or imams? But do you think they are right to say these people have failed? Is a different thing what they preach, is a different thing what they
directly, I don't think we have that right per se, because two things, right? One, if you're to make an order of precedence or hierarchy of people that failed, you should not put your spiritual leaders first. How about you start from your parents, right? How about you start from your parents, right? Then maybe your government, right? Because don't forget, pardon me, these people you call religious leaders are also
human.
I was going to use the word hustler, but it's a form of it's a occupation first.
Don't break this
right?
basket. Don't break this.
So let me give you a very good example. Look at
says pastors are hustlers.
No, that I said.
Or religious leaders are hustlers.
When I say hustlers, I'm using hustle in the context of corporate Nigeria, right? Anyone who's looking for what's to call it? It's a honest living, right? You're trying to make an honest living, right? It's their form of making an honest living. So let me give an example. Sometimes the people know the right thing to preach, but the right thing doesn't give you the most mileage, right? So that can be a challenge. So I don't think it's fair. For example, if you say, all what this pastor preaches is prosperity.
Yeah.
If he preaches
holiness,
would half of the people return the next month? And then he also has KPIs, right? Let me give an example. A church that is a branch, right, from a bigger church.
Exactly.
So like what you call church planting. Church must grow. If he knows what he's going to say, that will make the church keep growing, right? And he knows that holiness does not grow my church as much as prosperity does. He's going to preach a lot more prosperities. But that's not to say that they don't have a moral obligation to do that. It's just to say that there are people who were throwing stones at the wrong
So we should start the stone with our parents.
Yes, I think a lot of the biggest unit of any change is family. So when the family system crumbled, right, every other thing, see, even the bad government we're talking about is a product of bad family systems. If you think about it, right? Right. If you come from a family where you have a right to protect your family name and integrity, you're going to do things differently, right? So I think that that's a problem. And don't forget, family system becomes your community. If you know that if you do something in a particular way, you'll never be able to go back home. You do things differently. And that's the thing. So I think that, once again, I just said this a few minutes ago, like, I think average people like to lay blames and people who are going somewhere don't. So I rather not want to even lay blames at whoever the stakeholder is. Maybe yourself, because you've blamed everybody apart from yourself. Like, there's also a part of it that you right. I mean, I'd give a good example. If I wanted a position in certain places, I would have gotten them. But I mean, I'd rather just be hustling for my urgent 2K. I know where I'm going to with that commission, right? So just some level of dignity is something that you inherit from home, right? I mean, if I don't believe in something, I don't believe in it straight up, right? So I think that's one of the problems.
And it's because you had a good moral background that says, I'm better off hustling for my urgent 2K than to okay.
Yeah, so I'm sure you get the concept.
I get the concept. I'm trying to say it the way they get it, because you and I we can literally mom and we know what we're saying. Wow, I wish we can end, but I think we have to bring you back, because me and you have so many things to talk about. But I want to wrap up with 20 years from now, what do you see of Eizu Uwaoma?
20 years from now, Eizu, I've realized that it's selfish to want to stay small. It's comfortable to want to stay small. So a few years ago, I said, I just want to be a small boutique consulting firm, add value to people. Because I don't want more people, I increase my price, I'll be premium so I can serve less people. But then I realized that you'll be depriving a whole system, right? If you pay 50 people salary every month, okay, that looks fair. But if you pay 5,000 people salary every month, that 5,000 people is probably like 50,000 families, right? If you know what circular flow of wealth, because that guy you paid 400K, right? Sends his mother goes to hospital, his child goes to school. So for that reason, right, expansion is something that has to happen. So one of the things I've been in the next 20 years is to expand across vertical lines and across horizontal lines, run a few other businesses. Currently, I sit on multiple boards, and I want to do that a lot more. Inspire young people to be more, to do more, and to have more, in that order. I think what's going on now is a lot of people want to have more without doing more. It's not have more without doing more. It's doing more so you can have more. Like, show people how to arrange it properly. So when I say be more, is let people have a sense of identity. I'm big on building brand. I'm sure you know that. One of the things that I take pride is, if we're going to do any management consulting work with you, you've got to be a brand, right? And building a brand means that you've got to be able to be identifiable, right? And be unique and be consistent. So I want to show people how to build brands more, right? I also want people to do more. Do more means we want people to know that most people haven't used 30% of their capacity. And the reason why they can't do more than 30% of their capacity is that they're looking at people around them. So if you're doing 30% of your capacity, 25% of your capacity, and people around you are doing like 19 or 18, you start to feel like a king, right? So people need to have global perspective to life. And Dr. Stephen, I've known you for over 15 years, and I've seen how in that 15 years, I mean, last time I checked, you haven't gone to have a master's, but you probably become a master in multiple things. And I give that one variable to your travel. I mean, I don't know another person that travels as much as you. When you have global perspective, this world is like a big library. How do you get into a big library and you decide to just pick up one book and read only one chapter, and for the rest of your life, only one page in that chapter? So a capacity to expand is something I want more people to be. So I want people to be more, to do more. If you can do more, don't bother about having more, right? Don't bother about having more. I want young people to know that, look, they can do more, even in government, right? This whole thing of taking crumbs and we are comfortable with taking crumbs, I mean, I don't think it's fair. So next 20 years, I want to build institutions that are strong brand, whether as a investor, right, or as a consultant, right. I want to do that, and then more importantly, dedicate my whole life to younger people. And I'm glad that the average age in people in my office is like in their early 20s. Of course, you know how people would say, oh, you like to collect smart, super smart people. But then I also realized that cumulative advantage is a thing. If I find that very smart person and I put the best of me in that very smart person, he can help more people than the average person, right? So I think that's one of the things. So people, brands, that's what I want to do. And of course, I'm big now on family. I'm sure you know that. Yeah.
That is. Okay, so we've known each other for, I think, 15 years running.
Yes, yeah.
What do you think had made our relationship last this long? Because I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people you've seen around me that are no longer around me.
Now that people identify as, let's just say, relationship is friendship. If I look like something else, that's on the lighter note, right? Yeah. So what are the things I thought about it like maybe 2 weeks ago, and I realized one is mutual respect. Mutual respect, right? I've never been afraid to say, oh, this is my view, and if I'm called back to order, say, oh, okay, this is not what I meant, and I'm sorry. Ego, friendship is not a place for ego, right? Even if one person wins, both parties will still lose, right? And then I think mutual value. I don't believe in one person being a parasite, right? I mean, Dr. Steven, also humility. I'm not sure I've ever sent you a message say, oh, I need this in terms of, and you haven't done that either. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with it, but if one person consistently does that at the detriment of that person, you know, I heard Jay-Z say something years ago, Sean Carter, and he says, you can't tell who your true friends are until you're both rich. He says, because if one person is if both are poor, they need each other. It's a misery needs company, right? If I'm unemployed, you're unemployed, everybody has gone to work. We're going to be friends because we are an association of unemployed people. We're going to just play Ludo, play chess, drafts on the streets. So if both people are broke, you won't know who your true friends are because you both need the misery to stay together. We both sit down and talk about government. Now, if one person is rich, that person is poor, you still can't tell who your friends are because one needs one more, right? The poor needs the rich man to stay alive, right? And the rich man needs somebody to throw down his ego and to form, I went to, the people that travel abroad and just want to meet people that have not traveled abroad to tell them how abroad looks, right? But when you find two comfortable people, and I don't want to use the word rich because that's relative, and they've known themselves for years, I mean, it shows that, I mean, it's mutual respect, right? So I think that that's what it is. And I never said this to you privately, and this might be time to say publicly. Your view on loyalty was an absolute new for me. Wow. If you remember the conversation we used to have before, like, look, I'm not big on this thing where loyalty, I mean, loyalty is relative, but I've seen you stick your neck for the people that matter to you, and I'm forced to learn it. And I'm also forced to see what that does. Like, I mean, you're by far one of the most loyal people. I mean, not a perfect person in any way you can look at it, but loyalty, and I've seen what loyalty can do. Everybody needs people that have their back in any ways. And I think that that's important. And what we both share together is the inability, even if we tried, to keep grudges. Right? I've seen you offend people, and I've seen people maybe find you offensive, and how it's not a big deal, right? I was still in the car of recent, I think we're in Ghana, and we're driving, and one of our egbons was in the car, and the egbon said something that, they think it was Father Christmas. I thought about that thing, obviously I said, think of Father Christmas, and this is an egbon, and then, you know how people are with people where they have to agree with everything they say, and your response to it is, sir, maybe you're also a Father Christmas. you know, he said, your Father Christmas, I'm like, this is subliminal bass balls that you're giving your egg, but agreeableness is something a lot of people want to be. A lot of people are afraid to rock the boat and shake the table. You're unafraid to shake the table, and that's something. Maybe because we're both cholerics in the ways that we are. We're both cholerics. We will shake a table if we need to be disagreeable, because you see.
In a respectful way.
In a respectful way, yes. A lot of people, I've summed up why people struggle as 3 things.
Yeah.
1, a lot of people are unable to lead. And I'm not just talking about leadership.
Yeah.
Take charge.
Yes.
So why you think of leadership, think about leading others. A lot of people don't lead their own lives. You shock that many people are trying to get other people to lead them.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The over righteousness of a lot of people is because you want your pastor to lead you. Right? You can lead yourself. Take charge. Take responsibility. So a lot of that's one of the things I've seen that a lot of people don't have the ability to do. Second thing is a lot of people don't have a sense of urgency. And I've seen that a lot. See, the most average people and the poorest people are people that procrastinate. Come and do this thing now. I'll do it tomorrow. Yesterday you said tomorrow. Right? Today you said tomorrow. Tomorrow you'll be tomorrow. Right? So once you have anybody who doesn't have that sense of urgency, that's why death, the concept of death for me is the biggest motivator. Knowing that we're not going to be here in the next 100 years. So time is ticking. Like I ask myself every time, do you know what time it is? I look at myself, look, what can I not do in 20 years, 30 years? If I can't do this in 20, 30 years, I'm dreaming guys, I'm like, oh, I'm driving, I finish a speech, I'm telling my colleague that, oh, imagine you giving this speech in 5 years, because in my mind, I'm like, in 5 years' time, am I going to have the strength to do 6, 7 sessions in one day? So urgency is a thing. And then the third one is people not having social skill, which is where extrovertedness comes from, right? And that's something I think that a lot of people don't have. Yes, meeting people, knowing people, being pleasant, being valuable, all of that, I think that great assets to be. And I think that's what keeps us going. All of the things I've said are the things, you have a sense of urgency. Let's do it now. Let's do it now. Let's do it now. We can even do it and start thinking about it while we're doing it, right? And I think that it's an amazing concept to be.
Thank you for coming, Eizu. Ladies and gentlemen, it's end of another beautiful episode of Leadership Podcast with me, Stephen Akintayo. See you next time. Bye-bye.